Hi, you're listening to Kate Palmer from sparkletart.com.
And today I've set myself a bit of a challenge.
I'm going to show you one way to colour fine hair. Now, lots of stamped images have fantastic thick amounts of hair for us to play with our Copic markers and blend to our heart's content, but not all. So what do you do on those images which don't have a lot of space for you to blend your colours? This is one way to colour hair on those fiddly detailed images.
I've got this beautiful image from Sweet Pea Stamps drawn by Meredith Dillman, and the colouring on the original is in watercolour and it is absolutely gorgeous. You're going to have to bear with me working so that it's the right way up for me. I'm not good enough to colour upside down. For the hair I'm choosing to use Y15, E53, E50, E55 and YR23.
When it comes to images like this that have lots of fine detail, it's difficult to use traditional blending techniques with your Copic markers. There just is not enough paper for you to use your traditional blending. So what I have found works for me is to use a series of dots and little tiny strokes and to layer these one over the top of each other, which actually blends the colours. So whilst it's not your traditional Copic blending, you add it in the same manner. I like to work from dark to light as it helps me sort of not make my images too dark. And the key with these is not to add very much ink.
So I'm starting with my E55, which is my darkest colour, and I'm just going to go and put little marks where the shadows on the hair will be.
I'm going to work from the artist's original drawing as a little guide as to where to put my dark and lighter colours. Now, the original is a dark blonde and I'm making mine brown hair just so that some of the gold areas stand out a little bit better when I use my Copic markers. I'm beginning by laying down the darkest colour. As you can see, there's really not very much space here to work with for the hair, so you're going to need to be really careful not to overdo it. What I'm doing is laying down the tiniest amount of dark colour first. You can always go and add more dark, but you really can't take it away. If you've used Copics for any length of time, you'll know it's really easy to make an image too dark. You might notice I'm not trying to be fancy here. All I'm doing is adding some colour and adding as little as possible just to get the colour on the image. No feathering, no blending, nothing fancy, just adding the darkest colour first and adding as little as possible.
Moving on to my next darkest colour, which is the YR23.
Now the key to this technique is to try and add as little ink as possible to the paper while still getting your colour down. I hope you can see that what I'm doing is very, very lightly touching the tip, not the whole side of the marker, just the very tip to the paper, just to lay down that tiny amount of colour. In some areas I'm using little dots. This is how I'm blending the darker colour and the colour I'm using now. And in other areas I'm using tiny, tiny little strokes. It depends on the direction of the hair. Like normal Copic hair colouring, you do want to try and move your marker in the direction that the hair would be falling. If it's closer to the crown, I sometimes use little dots, especially if I'm trying to blend. For this technique to work, treat the Copic ink like it costs the same as gold. You want to get the colour on the card, but using as little of that ink as possible.
Onto Y15 to add a little bit of gold. I'm going to go quite sparingly with this because I really don't want her hair to look yellow.
If you're sitting there thinking, oh, it's not dark enough yet, for goodness sakes, please do not add more dark colour at this time. Wait until you've finished adding the other few lighter colours. The key here is to try and keep it light, not to try and make it darker. You can always go back and add more dark later.
So I'm just using this to tone down some of the browns. Now the real trick here is not to add too much colour and to leave a little white space. Again, I just need to add the tiniest bit of this. So next is E50, and I'm just going to use this to soften some of those edges.
When you've finished adding the lightest colour, it's at that point you assess whether your image is dark enough and has enough contrast or not. For me, this is not yet dark enough, so I'm going to go back in and add a little bit more of each of my colours.
So I'll add a little of the E53. Just to help darken some of these areas up. Now I'd say that the E53 is optional here. You don't have to use it. And then lastly, the E50. Now I've already added a little bit of this. This is my final touch. I'm just going to add a tiny bit more. Just to make those highlights stand out that little bit. Now don't forget you want to leave some white areas. But to make those white areas really stand out, you need some areas that aren't white. And this just helps colour right up to that white section without looking funny. Alright, so I'm just going to go in and darken a few of those areas with the E55 again. And add a touch more of the YR23. Tiny bit more Y15. And finishing finally with a touch more E50. And that's where I'm going to leave the hair.
I've added 2 complete layers of colour in total. This has allowed me to blend and add a lot of contrast, but still keep a lot of light in the image.
So a little darker and a little more brown than the original, but I'm hoping that that makes the gold jewellery stand out just that bit more.
So I hope this tutorial has been helpful, and if you'd like a copy of this stamp for yourself, it's available from Sweet Pea Stamps. Thanks so much for watching and have a wonderful day. Bye.